And God created the heavens and the earth, and also land and water, and breathed a living soul into animals, fishes, and birds, to reproduce and multiply. But then God created a man. Peace and harmony reigned on earth and heaven until the devil demanded to become higher than God, and wars, hunger, and cold began. 2023. Nowadays, 1/3 of Ukrainians' forests have been destroyed. 1/3 of the entire territory of Ukraine is covered with landmines and contaminated with dangerous substances. The enemy occupied 10 national parks of Ukraine and 10 natural preserves. Millions of farm animals have died as a result of the fascists' actions. Tens of thousands of dolphins died in the Black Sea. This terrible list of crimes by the occupiers goes on and on.
It is impossible to accurately calculate the level of such atmospheric pollution from burned oil depots and fires, as well as blown-up buildings and burned chemical plants. Innumerable animals killed, just imagine it.
The amount of damage caused to Ukrainians' ecosystems by the war has already reached almost 2 trillion hryvnias. Soil, air, water, everything necessary for life all suffered incredible damage at the hand of the fascists. Striving to destroy Ukrainians, they stop at nothing. Scientists say that the consequences can be felt far outside the borders of Ukraine.
The ecosystem, it is so global that it is like a single organism. It is impossible that one part of this organism is sick and the other is healthy. The whole ecosystem is sick now.
I kill the house. This is the literal translation of the terrible Greek word ecocide. This is a new type of military action. An aggressor state that commits ecocide aims to erase the recovery potential of the country that suffers from its aggression. The terrible truth is that the damage to the ecosystems of Ukraine is an unprecedented challenge for the whole world. Everything is connected with everything. Everything has to go somewhere. What affects one affects all. It was said by Barry Commoner, an American ecologist. These words are considered the main laws of ecology, the main laws of nature itself. Soil is the greatest natural treasure of Ukraine. 1/3 of the world's black soils are here. 2 years ago, Ukraine ranked second in the world as an exporter of barley, fourth of corn, and fifth of wheat. Such was our land, and this is what became of it.
You have seen the shocking pictures where the agriculture field is all littered with the craters. But it's not just a crater, there was an explosion, there was remnants of all explosives and they are still there.
After World War I, the cultivated lands in Europe decreased by 22%. After World War II, the ones just in Ukraine decreased by 40%. And here again, due to the invasion of fascists of Ukraine and the unleashed full-scale war, already more than 40% of agricultural lands have been affected as a result of military actions. How long will it take to restore them? It is difficult to say at the moment. So, it is impossible to simply wrap these craters and sow, because it is known that sunflower and corn are the plants that extract the most toxic substances from the soil. Moreover, the root system of the sunflower can penetrate up to 6 meters into the soil. Even if these toxic substances are washed away with water, the roots can still extract them, and all these toxic substances will be in the sunflower seeds. There are photos taken during a famous battle near the town of Passchendaele in Belgium, year 1917. The battle was fought for every meter of land, and these photos are already from nowadays, year 2023, Ukraine. Bakhmut. More than 100 years have passed and nothing has changed.
These are military actions on Ukrainian lands, from the creation of engineering and technical facilities to bombing at the level, in some places, at the level of World War I.
With satanic hatred, Rushists destroy literally everything. During the first period of the war, the occupiers used up to 60,000 shells per day. And also aerial bombs, missiles and other types of ammunition flew on Ukrainian land. As a result, thousands of hectares of agricultural lands in Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, Mykolaiv, Kherson, Kyiv and Donetsk regions require thorough research and restoration. Ukrainian scientists have been working on this literally since the first days of the war. We decided to investigate what happens to the main microbiological component of the soil and to take samples precisely from different soils in different situations, such as from under a burned tank and from shell craters and from mine holes from air bomb explosions. Scientists say that billions of microorganisms live in healthy soil, which ensures its fertility. As a result of military actions, their number decreased by 5 orders of magnitude to thousands. But the biggest problem is that the dangerous substances, like heavy metals and various compounds, get into the soil during explosions. It is also necessary to highlight the fact that not even just where there were craters, where it flew in, as we say in our country, but even where there were the fire positions, yes, where they fired from, then in those places a year after shooting, for example, where we observed everything, then nothing grows in this place, and it is all burned land. Satellite images show that in the invaded areas of southern Ukraine, Rushists have built hundreds of kilometers of defensive lines with trenches and concrete anti-tank barriers, the so-called Dragon T's. Landmines of all possible sorts and types are everywhere where the invaders were.
The area covered in landmines is more than 170,000 square kilometers. It is mined at various levels, somewhere more, somewhere less. In some places there were battles during a month, in others battles have been going on for a year or more with the use of shaft of fire tactics. The same will happen in the environment.
This is so-called Zone Rouge in France. More than 1,200 square kilometers of land poisoned by weapons. Remains of animals and people has been unsuitable for life for 100 years. Property damage, 100%. Damage to agriculture, 100%. This land cannot be cleansed. Human life is impossible here, ecologists say. This area got the name Red Zone, not only because red is a color of danger. There even the earth changed its color and became pink due to the content of dangerous substances. Such soil can burn like a turberry, it can explode. And similar zones already exist in Ukraine, in the Kharkiv region. This fire at the oil depot in the village of Kalinivka, Fastiv district, was visible even from the capital. Then the enemy cynically destroyed 22 reservoirs with oil products, 8 platforms with tank wagons. It looked like a real Armageddon.
The way the oil depots were destroyed was simply a disaster. Because a missile hit the oil depot, a tank wagon exploded and hit the reservoir where water was stored, which was used to fight fire. It mixed, spilled over and spilled outside the territory of the oil depot onto an agriculture plot.
Then laboratory staff analyzed the soil and water in the pond. The concentration of petroleum products exceeded the norm by 6 and in some places by 12 times. The fish could not live in such water. They all died. According to the facts of this crime, the prosecutor's office Office opened criminal proceedings. The case will be considered at the International Court of Justice. In general, hundreds of such proceedings have already been initiated. There have been no precedents for such large-scale crimes against the environment in world practice.
We have our own database, which is illustrated by a special online map. It is now already has more than 1,030 different cases of damage to the environment in a year of full-scale war.
Previously, the cost of surveying Ukrainian lands with a high risk of mine contamination and damining the affected territories is estimated at $436 million. The total amount of damages due to soil contamination with dangerous substances is estimated at almost 700 billion hryvnias. The land itself is able to recover, but recover due to natural biosynthesis, since the bulk of the victims are agricultural lands that fall out of the agricultural cycle. Therefore, it is extremely important to recover them as soon as possible, to start all this process in order to be able to use them. Russia, the aggressor country, fired thousands of missiles at Ukraine. During the detonation of missiles and artillery shells, a number of chemical compounds appear in the air: carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, water vapor, brown gas, formaldehydes, and vapor of cyanic acid.
Cancer diseases are now the second cause in terms of death rates, and they are also caused by all the negative factors in the environment, including air pollution.
It is known that typical substances used to detonate missiles are various lead compounds. Both lead itself and its compounds are toxic to the human body and belong to highly dangerous substances. Once in the body, it is transported to the brain, kidney, liver, and bones. Lead is also deposited in the teeth and bones, where it gradually accumulates. Back in 2019, before the beginning of the Russian aggression, it was established that almost half of the deaths resulting from established effects of chemical substances are caused by the presence of lead in the human body.
When we had problems with Chernobyl, you remember, yes, the Scandinavians were the first to raise it, because they had an increased radiation background, and it went down the road. The wind was just that way, and these crumbs of radioactivity reached God knows where.
According to the United Nations data, about 7 million people die each year worldwide from diseases related to atmospheric emissions.
Well, you know that the Chernobyl accident led to the fact that in Ukraine the level of cardiovascular diseases rose very much. Radioactive particles, especially alpha particles, which were thrown out, are water-soluble. They got into the body, they led to damage to the cardiovascular system. Almost every person here over the age of 50 has same problems.
Ukrainian scientists argue when missile flies over a field, it pollutes air, soil and water. A person in the Kharkiv region grows organic wheat, then takes it to the reception point, but their wheat is refused because it has excessive levels of toxic substances. And he says, we haven't used any chemicals, and then after having analyzed flight over his fields and everything, every missile flight from one place to another leaves toxic substances in the air. During this full-scale war, Russians used phosphorus bombs, banned by Geneva Convention.
This is a very brilliant sign, fantastic sight. When these fires are flying, they fall in on land and then everything flares up. The temperature is very high.
The burning temperature of phosphorus is 800 degrees. This weapon of mass destruction is self-igniting. Phosphorus ignites when it comes into contact with oxygen or with soil. If these sparks get on a person, they leave terrible external and internal injuries. phosphorus fumes can completely burn out the lungs. The land suffers no less from this. It's impossible to plant anything on these fields drenched with phosphorus. The use of phosphorus bombs was recorded in Rubizhne, Lugansk region, Mariupol, Marinka, Donetsk region, Severodonetsk, Kramatorsk and Popasna. The enemy also dropped phosphorus bombs on Avdiivka and Bakhmut, symbols of Ukrainian resilience. Stop! Danger! The waters are mined. Such signs are everywhere on the beaches of Odessa. The maritime roads from the city all the way to the Bosphorus are also mined. Russia has scattered between 400 to 600 mines in the Black Sea waters, which periodically get detached from their anchors and drift near the shores of Turkey, Romania, Bulgaria, and of course, Ukraine. From time to time, mines are washed ashore in the Odessa region. On June 11, 2022, 2 of them detonated, and a man was blown up. He died right in front of his wife and son. Dead dolphins. In just the first 3 months since the start of the Russian aggression, over 120 dead dolphins were found on the Black Sea coast near Odessa. Similar instances of animal deaths are being reported in Turkey, Romania and Bulgaria.
I saw those numbers. Let's say numbers are mentioned of some 50,000 dead dolphins already now. This is catastrophically high number.
Samples were taken from the bodies of the deceased. Currently, the main version of the investigation is as follows. The cause of death is the use of sonar by Russian ships, which inflicts acoustic injuries on cetaceans incompatible with life.
Many missiles were shot down over the Black Sea, for example, those headed towards Odessa. And on one hand, it's good that they didn't reach their destination, but on the other hand, they contained rocket fuel, which might not have burned completely during the explosion. Hundreds of kilograms of this highly toxic fuel, with its oxidizers, ended up in the sea. Naturally, it dissolves. This process occurred, and in some places there were high concentrations. So, if there were any fish or dolphins nearby, they had a high chance of dying because of it. Similarly, echolocation affects those very dolphins, those sonars from submarines.
Everything repeats itself over and over again. Everything that the fascists once did, now the Rushists do. 80 years ago, specifically on September 7, 1943, Hermann Göring signed a secret directive. The Nazis, during their retreat from the territories they occupied, were to destroy everything: structures, food supplies, poison wells, burned buildings, mine roads and demolished dams.
I personally didn't believe that they would blow up the Kakhovka hydroelectric station, but they did.
On June 6, 2023, sad news came from the Kherson hydroelectric station. Around 3 in the morning, Russian military forces detonated the dam of the Kakhovka hydroelectric station, located in the Kherson region. Here we have a funny situation. The water has risen. Wonderful, awesome, such are our affairs. Over 16,000 people and thousands of animals found themselves in the so-called critical zone. Crimea and the southern part of the Kherson region will be left without water. The ecosystem is being destroyed. Massive deaths of fish, livestock, birds. We made a slight miscalculation, and the consequences of such an uncontrolled action will soon lead to significant territorial losses, stated the military of the 205th Motorized Rifle Brigade, who were responsible for detonating the dam.
For them, nothing is scared, and this is the first time, the biggest challenge, that we are fighting an opponent who is cynical and respects nothing.
It is the largest technological and environmental disaster in Europe over the last decade. decades. It can be compared to the explosion of a tactical nuclear weapon of 5-10 kilotons. Almost 450 tons of chemicals which were in the turbines ended up in the Dnieper River. The water level is dropping and a new desert appears on the map.
All the sewer outlets spilled out, with all the waste from production ending up there. This includes droppings from poultry farms and then from the production at large animal farms. Ponds form in these places where there is a maximum multiplication of the bacteria that were present before. They became concentrated because the water evaporates and their concentration increases by thousands of times.
Microbiologists say that the biggest threat comes from microorganisms that will provoke viral intestinal diseases. Hepatitis A and B, typhoid fever, salmonellosis, dysentery and the once forgotten typhoid can also spread quickly. Shocking images of European pandemics from the 17th, 18th centuries will become a reality in the 21st.
I would like to emphasize that this is a region that has always been inherently dangerous due to the periodic outbreaks of diseases like cholera and anthrax, especially cholera. Cholera thrives in water, being able to survive for months. Moreover, cholera can infect fish, and thus cholera vibrio can rapidly infect a large population.
It's now strictly forbidden to swim in the Black Sea. Dead cows from the Kherson region are being washed up on the beaches of Bulgaria. All countries in the Black Sea basin are under threat. Together with the waters from the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant, toxic metals and hydrocarbons have entered the sea. It's already reported that in some places the salinity of the sea water has decreased by the third.
Humankind has never faced such large-scale disasters, meaning that science does not yet have information on the consequences of such massive catastrophes.
During the war in Ukraine, millions of animals died. Due to the explosion of the hydroelectric power station, almost all of the animals in the fairy tale Dibrova Zoo, located in Nova Kakhovka, perished. The war caused the most damage to Ukrainians' forests.
The first major problem, they are difficult to demine. There are such big challenges. There are a lot of the forests and they will take a long time to clear. Many forests will be completely destroyed due to fires, due to combat operations or because of other factors. For instance, pine trees are particularly sensitive to high level of smog and large quantities of aerosols. I was in the Chernihiv region and many pine forests died even just from the passage of military equipment.
According to ecologists, by the end of 2022, as a result of active combat operations, 3 million hectares of forest were completely destroyed. That's a third of Ukrainians' forest fund. If anyone in Western Europe thinks this doesn't concern them, they are gravely mistaken. At the site of the former Kakhovka reservoir, where the most significant technological disaster of recent times occurred, mutations and possibly new strains of already known viruses are emerging.
For example, the main combat operations are conducted in so-called forest belts, because they protect soldiers from the open space. And what do we see? We see that these forest belts are heavily destroyed. They are subjected to artillery and rocket fires. This system used to help combat sand and dust storms. And now, when everything dries up, there are no forest belts. When these sand and dust storms rise, it's very difficult to predict where they will carry these mutated strains.
That it was the chalk ecosystem once looked like. In the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, unique biovegetation had been forming for thousands of years. There was nothing else like it on Earth.
There are certain objects, so to speak, that, once lost, can be considered gone forever. These could be populations of rare species. For instance, in the Mykolaiv and Kherson regions, there are some plant species, I believe 2 types of cornflowers, which are found only in 2-3 locations and nowhere else on the planet. If these these locations are lost, the species will disappear from the face of Earth and we won't be able to recover them.
Chalk and chalk plants, over thousands of years of their existence, survived both ice ages and climate changes. However, they couldn't survive the destructive Russian world.
For example, there is a chalk pine, a species or subspecies of pine that grows specially on chalk. And it's not as common as the usual pine we have in Ukraine, which is the most abundant of all trees here. This chalk pine is found very locally. The majority of the area where this pine is found in Ukraine has been affected by military actions of various intensities.
War kills people, war kills animals, and destroys plants. The scorched earth tactic has been known to mankind for over 100 years. It was the Russian army that, during both World War I and World War II, destroyed everything in its path. The sabotage of the Kiev hydroelectric power station, the destruction of Khreshchatyk, the Assumption Cathedral, all of this was done on Stalin's orders. Now, the orders to destroy everything come from Führer Putin.
Ecocide is the intentional destruction of the environment, you understand? And with many crimes, it's necessary to prove that it was done intentionally and not just recklessly. And the environment suffers, from which people then suffer for an extended period of time. This issue isn't entirely regulated in the legal framework, even on an international level.
Environmental disasters, such as Seveso in 1976, Bhopal in 1984, Chernobyl in 1986, the wastewater spill in Spain in 1998, or the Deepwater Horizon oil rig explosion in 2010, led to significant legal proceedings. In April 2010, Polly Higgins, a lawyer from the United Kingdom, proposed to the United Nations that ecocide be recognized as an international crime against peace, alongside genocide. Interestingly, in 2020, marking the 75th anniversary of the Nuremberg trials, a group of international lawyers was formed to work on recognizing ecocide as a fifth international crime against humanity. In the world, everything is interconnected, from the farthest star in the sky to the tiniest grain of sand under a person's foot, wrote Jack London at the beginning of the 20th century, long before the discovery of the laws of nature. As a result of the destruction of Ukrainian nature by the invaders, the world might face famine in areas with water scarcity. Climate change will occur. Emissions of dangerous substances over us will be felt in Antarctica in just a month. Everything is interconnected. The ecosystem has no borders. So, to save the world, we need to immediately stop this Russian aggression.